Hello and welcome to the April monthly update for Utilico Emerging Markets Trust plc. I'm Mark Lebbell, Senior Analyst. April's NAV Total Return was up by 1.4%, significantly outperforming the MSCI Emerging Markets Total Return Index, which declined by 2.0% in sterling terms. April was a volatile month for markets. Initially, markets sold off sharply as US President Trump announced a raft of tariffs on imports into the US on April 2nd, his so-called Liberation Day. China's tariff was initially set at 34%, Thailand's at 36%, and Vietnam was allocated a rate of 46%. After China retaliated with increased tariffs on US imports, China's rate was raised, eventually reaching 145%, with China imposing a 125% tariff on US goods. In the days after Liberation Day, equity markets plunged, the US dollar depreciated, and US Treasury yields increased, forcing President Trump to postpone the introduction of tariffs. Many markets recovered to higher levels than at the end of March. The flip-flopping of tariff rates has resulted in considerable uncertainty over where US trade policies will end up. Uncertainty over tariffs, which may or may not be imposed from July, will inevitably weigh on economies globally, and we expect corporates to defer investment decisions. Falling commodity prices, with Brent crude oil down by 15.5% and copper down by 9.4% in April, indicates that the market is expecting a global slowdown in economic activity. If energy prices remain low, inflationary pressures from tariffs should be dampened, and in many markets interest rate reductions should continue. Notwithstanding the economic uncertainty, this should be positive for equity valuations. Investors reallocated funds towards markets seen as having less exposure to tariff impacts. Markets in the positive camp in April included Brazil's Bovespa index, which was up by 3.7%, the Mexico Bolsa IPC gained 7.2%, Chile's IPSA index was up by 5.1%. In Asia, India's Sensex index rose by 3.7%, the Philippines' PSEI gained 2.8%, and Indonesia's JCI was up by 3.9%. Declining markets in Asia included Vietnam's Ho Chi Minh Index, which declined by 6.2%, Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index, which was down by 4.3%, and China's Shanghai Composite declined by 1.7%. Elsewhere in the world, in Argentina the Merval Index declined by 10.2%, and Turkey's BIST Index fell by 6.0%. The US dollar weakened, especially against European currencies, including sterling. Sterling gained 3.5% against the US dollar, although it was 1.7% weaker against the euro and 1.0% weaker against the Mexican peso. Whilst it gained against the US dollar, the Brazilian real was down 2.2% against sterling. Currencies which were weaker than US dollar in April included the Vietnamese dong, Turkish lira and Indian rupee, which fell by 5.1%, 4.6% and 3.6% respectively against sterling. Argentina's peso devalued by 11.2%. Looking at UEM's portfolio, there were three changes to the top 30 holdings in April, with NHPC, CTP and Helios Towers placing Nalsat, Vietnam Holding and Shanghai International Airport in the top 30. NHPC, an Indian state-owned hydropower and renewables company, is a new entrant into the top 30, as is Helios Towers, which owns and operates over 14,000 telecoms tower sites in Africa and the Middle East. CTP, which has previously been a top 30 constituent, is an industrial property developer with a focus on logistic parks in Central and Eastern Europe. There were relatively large price movements in many of the portfolio holdings during the month. Most were positive in local currency terms and largely driven by investors rotating into sectors and countries seen as more defensive in the current environment. Brazilian stocks were particularly strong, with Serena Energy up by 26.3%, Rumo up by 19.6%, Horizon up by 15.8%, Sabesp up by 11.3%, and Electrobras up by 8.6%. ESO in Colombia advanced by 11.1%. Many European stocks were also strong, with Piraeus Port up 12.2% and Impost up by 10.0%. In Asia, stocks were mixed, but Manila Water did advance by 8.1%, and UE Expressway was up by 6.6%, and Kings was up by 7.2%. Other technology-related stocks in the top 30 fell, however, with FPT down by 9.6%, Sunivision down by 5.8%, and Telelink Business Services down by 8.5%. Vietnam Opportunity Fund declined by 6.8%, reflecting weakness in the Vietnamese market. Ocean Wilson's declined by 5.7%, and TAV declined by 5.6%. UEM's debt position increased marginally to £7.8 million due to FX movements. UEM's share price declined by 0.9% in April, ending the month at 218p. Discount to NAV increased from 16.0 to 16.4%. UEM continued to buy back shares. For more details, please do read UEM's April fact sheet, which is available on the website at uemtrust.co.uk.